Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, we are going sleep gentle walk through New Kingdom, Egypt, where you are the one standing on the roof, palm on warm brick, listening to the Nile breathe like a careful animal. If this kind of cozy history helps you drift off, tap subscribe so the next chapter arrives right on your roof, and leave a gentle like before we drift off together. I'd love to know a tiny thing about you. In the comments, tell me where in the world you're listening from and what time it is there right now. Ready? Set your sandals by the hatch, dim the lights, let your shoulders drop, and step onto the roof. The lamp breathes, the river answers. We begin where night begins. You are standing on the roof, souls finding the memory of warm brick. The day has stepped back, but not disappeared. It lingers in the wall, the way a good story lingers in a room, gentle and satisfied. Below, the Nile breathes against its banks like a big, careful animal. Above, the sky is patient. Stars keep their small appointments without fanfare. Near your shin, a clay lamp makes a pool of apricot light the size of a hand, and the air smells faintly of smoke and clean dust. This is your house in the New Kingdom. Mud bricks stacked by hands you know, plastered smooth where the weather asked for courtesy. The roof is flat and friendly, built as a room the sky is allowed to borrow. In the hot months, you sleep up here because the walls remember the day and the night needs a place to cool its brow. A reed mat has learned the shape of your shoulder. The linen blanket is thin, purposeful, and honest about what it can do. The wooden hatch waits with its modest hinge. Somewhere a jar ticks as it releases the day's coolness, the way a story releases its last detail. Down in the lane, a neighbor's door answers the wind with the quiet voice of an old friend. Farther off, dogs have a short conversation about nothing in particular, the sort of talk that fills a space like straw fills a mattress. Not flashy, but reliable. You step closer to the roof's low wall and rest your hands there. Brick answers with a warmth that says, "I kept some for you." You name the ordinary things because they are the map that lets sleep find you again if you wander. Lamp, hatch mat, jar, latch. Each has a job, and each has a way of doing it that makes sense in the body long before the mind gets fancy about it. The lamp burns on unassuming fuel, and the wick knows how to eat slowly. Its smoke climbs the air like a thin, thoughtful ribbon. The hatch learned its manners from the temple door. Lift, then settle. No fuss. The mat has bands of reed that remember your weight and your wandering toes. The jar sweats a little. Water inside keeps its cool by forgetting about the sun. You test the night with one foot. Warm brick, then a cooler patch where a recent breeze laid a hand and left. Over the edge, the river carries a small conversation. Water shoulder to water shoulder, it makes the kind of sound that says nothing alarming is happening and everything important still is. You breathe with it without meaning to. On the next house, shadows move. A neighbor easing a pallet into place. A child taking long, theatrical sips from a cup. Two cats discussing jurisdiction. It is all as it should be. Hardness lives here, but it uses its indoor voice. Mosquitoes test the corners of your patience. Dust tries to take up residence on every surface and is only sometimes discouraged by a good sweep and a better lecture. The straw in the mattress below will rustle later like a polite field. The grit in the bread will remind your teeth that the quern never quite becomes a cloud. But none of that is here to fight you. It is simply the way the day tells truth. You can rest inside truthful things. The night has its tasks. You turn toward the stair and go down into the house to make them happen, the little patrol that makes sleep less of a hope and more of a decision. Inside, the air is cooler, storeroom cool, thanks to walls thick enough to remember the shade and a door that knows how to keep a secret. You bank the coals to a small red city in the hearth's corner. Ash accepts the assignment. You lift the lid of the water jar and listen for that soft, satisfied glue sound the seal makes when it yields. You take a sip, and the clay taste on your tongue is not so much a flavor as a promise. Tomorrow, too. Beside the door, the bar drops into its notch with a sound your shoulders like. You rub a hint of oil into the hinge that has been shy these last few days. It says, "Thank you," in the only dialect it knows. Less squeak. You step back and consider the room the way a potter considers a jar, turning it slowly, reading it with the shoulders and the breath more than with the eyes. The reed mats lie flat. The basket of onions is off the floor. The way an elder advised so many seasons ago, you've forgotten where the advice ends and your own common sense begins. The corn is swept free of flour's fine sand. A clay lamp waits near the ladder, where it will be useful and not dramatic. You climb again to the roof, and the lamp climbs with you, steady in your hand. The flame walks without spilling, as if it knows this roof by heart. You set it down, and the light pools again. A small harbor. Linen slides over your shins. The air lifts the downy hairs on your forearm and then leaves them alone. Far away, someone laughs once. Nearer, a stringed instrument plays a tune that is mostly about the player's own contentment. The tune comes and goes with the breeze, and you allow it to arrive and to leave, the way you allow your thoughts to practice being neighbors rather than bosses. If your head drifts toward worry, the night has antidotes ready. Name the things within reach. The lamp is burning well. The mat covers the length of you without argument. The jar has water, and the cup knows where it belongs. Your sandals wait by the hatch, toes pointing toward morning, so that even your shoes know what comes next. Your cloak is folded to lift a shoulder just enough that the neck will not scold you when day asks you to look left, look right, and look up at a line you must keep true. You lie down, and the roof accepts this as the most logical outcome of the day. The brick under your hip is not mean, only honest. You shift once, and the mat learns. First sleep comes the way a careful guest comes, without knocking, because the door is already open. Breaths lengthen. The river adjusts its pace to match yours, or maybe it was the other way around all along. In the neighbor's courtyard, a goat reminds the night of its opinions and then remembers it was going to be polite. A thought arrives. The day was heavy, but fair. The sun pressed its thumbprint between your shoulders, and you walked forward anyway. Your hands carry stone dust, the way a letter carries words. Tomorrow, you will let water pronounce them clean. You mean to keep the image of the red ochre line you drew today as a small, proud ribbon in your mind, but sleep prefers untying. Good. Let it. When the world shifts and you wake halfway, you do not call it a failure. In this country, many sleepers make 2 visits to the same night. Between them, there is a corridor of time, set aside for being a little bit awake in the gentlest possible way. So you are. You stand, smooth the mat, and make your small patrol again, just enough to remind the house that it is a house and not a rumor. Oh. You bank the ember, coaxing it with a stick so thin and precise you've forgotten whether you found it or whittled it. The ember yawns, a small sun consenting to a smaller sky. You tug the linen to evenness because something in you believes that symmetry is a good host. You lift the water jar lid, listen for that soft syllable of release, and take another sip. It tastes like the bottom of a clay bowl after a good festival. Simple, clean, content with itself. On the roof again, the air feels as if the night has decided to move one finger closer to the dawn, but not the whole hand. You sit with your back against the low wall and look where the river should be. You cannot see it, but your skin knows its exact address. To your left, the horizon has the color of unripe figs. A breeze licks the edge of your ear the way a cat licks the edge of a bowl. It is interested, but not overly so. You tuck your feet under the linen and decide not to count anything that does not want to be counted. A mosquito fusses. You consider diplomacy and then invoke the net, a veil of woven sense that makes reasonable boundaries without shouting. The mosquito moves on to a different occupation, perhaps song composition. You smile with no teeth. You are not alone up here. All along the roofs, other people are practicing the same small craft, the craft of being comfortable enough for sleep to find them again. A mother hushes a child with a finger and a breath. An old man turns over with a sound like a page being turned in a book that has been read so often it has learned where to sigh. A pair of teenagers swap a secret at a volume that suggests they do not entirely know what the word secret means yet. A cat teaches a pottery shard about gravity. Night stretches its legs and puts its feet on the table. You forgive it because the table is sturdy, and because the night brings you gifts tucked in the hems of its tunic. Coolness, quiet, time that does not need to show anyone a list of what it has accomplished. You are standing again because your body trusts you enough to wander. You walk the length of the roof, which is not long, and back again, which is shorter because you have learned it now. If you were below, the hearth would be making small, self-satisfied sounds. Up here, the lamp makes them on its behalf. Think of the day as a clay pot. The sun is the wheel, turning faster than you think, and then slower than you feared. Your hands were the hands that kept the pot from flying into nonsense. If there is a wobble in its shoulder, you accept that the wobble is what makes it yours and not someone else's. If there is a place where the clay thinned because you were watching the door, you decide the thin place will be where light comes through. Tomorrow, you will wipe the pot with a damp cloth, and it will agree to be useful. The day was useful. You were too. From the far bank, a single drum speaks, and then thinks better of announcing anything. A breeze moves through the palms with the stealth of a rumor. The sky has thrown more stars into its net than you can name, and maybe that is for the best. Give one a name privately. Call it Riverkeeper, or Sleep's Lantern, or the bead that did not fall. And let the others be themselves without supervision. A little hunger visits and is soothed by a fig left from the evening's bowl. You pull it open with a thumb and forefinger, and see its inside. A tiny city of seeds having a polite festival. It tastes like every fig you have ever eaten and none you have eaten before. The sweetness keeps company with the clay taste in your mouth, the way a good conversation keeps company with long, agreeable silences. The roof gets cooler by a stitch. You are aware of your ankles, then not. You arrange the linen to cover the you that worries about drafts and to leave uncovered the you that believes air is a promise. It is fine to be of two minds. The night has room for both of you and a spare place for a third if you change your mind again. When thoughts about tomorrow try to become a list, you change them back into a string of beads and set them aside. Each bead knows its order without being told. The string knows its work without being watched. There will be water to lift, a line to mark, a tally to accept from a man who believes lists are a form of poetry. There will be sandals that ask for a new knot and a hinge that pretends it cannot remember the oil you gave it tonight. There will be a child who laughs in the lane like dropped beads again. But those are tomorrow's polite responsibilities. Tonight, you practice the responsibility of letting the night be the night. You lie down once more, not because you must, but because your body is so pleased with how the roof feels that it wants to see if lying down can make it even better. The mat pretends not to be flattered. The linen practices its art of being both there and not there. The lamp does not judge your decisions. It makes its small, patient circle and asks the dark to be a little less sure of itself. You choose a single image to carry you into second sleep. The river as a long, breathing animal that never forgets your name. Or the lamp's flame as a tiny reed boat that knows how to ferry you across from one side of the night to the other. Or your own breath as a jar that fills and empties until it remembers how full feels and then how empty feels, and then how unnecessary those words are when everyone agrees to be kind. If you wish, you let the picture of a plumb line hang in your mind, a straight, unargumentative truth that does not scold crookedness so much as give it something stable to lean toward. If tomorrow's stone is difficult, the line will make it less so. You do not wrestle with this. You let the image do the lifting. Pictures, too, have muscles. Second sleep comes like a careful tide, not because you hunted it, but because you left the door unlatched and the lamp on watch. You do nothing correctly and nothing wrong. You simply allow. The breath lengthens. The belly softens. The jaw forgets it is a gate and remembers it is a neighbor. The river says one last sensible thing and settles into the work of carrying whatever it was going to carry anyway. Before the door closes on this part of the night, you reach up and touch the low roof wall, the way a traveler touches a mile marker, warm, then cooler, then not noticeable at all, because you have joined the temperature of the world that loves you. The lamp breathes. The river answers. You turn once, and the mat learns better ways to be patient. You are asleep, and the roof keeps watch, which is to say, the world keeps its promise. You are kneeling at the quern, while the horizon decides what color to be. Stone whispers to stone. Your hands find their slow circle, the push and pull that makes a sandy song inside your wrists. Emmer breaks into smaller truths beneath the weight. A pale drift gathers against the edge like soft dunes in miniature. The room smells of flour and ash, and under it all, a thread of smoke, the kind that almost forgets it was once flame. Everything here is busy before the sun chooses its entrance. The house knows this choreography better than any person. The roof is a ceiling for the sky. The thick walls keep last night's cool like a careful promise. The door bar learns its day work from the night work it has already done. You feel the ground through your knees, a steadiness that makes your shoulders honest. The quern's upper stone sits obediently in your palms, heavy but familiar, and the lower stone accepts the circle like an old friend who knows which jokes to expect and laughs anyway. The first thing you do is listen, because morning is a sound before it becomes a light. Someone 2 alleys over coughs politely at the hearth to let it know the new day has arrived. Somewhere, a clay lid kisses the rim of a jar and then remembers it is supposed to be shy. A donkey declares that hay is an emergency. A sleepy child disagrees in a language made of blanket and sigh. A pigeon practices walking on your neighbor's roof, like a scholar practicing letters. Earnestly, noisily, a little proud, you pull the upper stone back and brush flour into the waiting tray. It feels fine as river silt and leaves a line on your finger like a pale road. When you stand, the world tilts its weight to accommodate you. Your knees tell a quick story about years of mornings. Your back tells a longer one. Hardness is honest about the price of bread. You accept the terms and carry the tray to the low table where a bowl waits. Broad-shouldered clay, burnished to the color of toasted apricot. Water leaves the jar with the small, friendly sound that always makes you think of a secret being told. Not the sharp, scandalous kind, but the sort of secret that is mostly comfort. We have enough for today. You salt the water, scatter flour like snow into a palm-sized storm, and make a crater where yeast waits with quiet ambition. Your fingers know when the texture turns from sand to silk. The bowl leans under your hands, a great patient thing agreeing to be useful. Dough sticks, then yields, then begins to breathe. You fold it over itself, and it remembers why it exists. The linen cloth has a few small stains with names you no longer recall. Wet autumn, generous summer, the day the jar cracked and taught everyone to be less proud of lids. You cover the bowl with that linen and leave it near the hearth, where the last red city of embers still glows against the banked ash. You could set the pot stirrer upright, and it would stand like a thin tree with sensible opinions. Instead, you stir the beer because the beer likes to be spoken to in circles. The mash is warm and smells like it has already forgiven the day for anything that might happen later. Beer is not a party in a jar. It is bred with water's patience. It will be food when you drink it, and it will be kind when the sun leans hard on the back of your neck and you need a reason not to be annoyed about it. You pat the lid on, and it makes that same soft kiss as the water jar. Even clay likes to be sure it has been heard. At the doorway, a pair of sandals wait, toes pointing toward the day as if they have a private appointment with the road. You set them aside for now. There is sweeping to be done. The reed broom understands the floor the way a shepherd understands a hillside, intimately, without counting. Dust speaks in the mornings. You let it speak, then escort it outdoors with the gentle authority of someone who knows how to host. The floor answers with a calm that is more felt than seen. Your feet anticipate where the cool patches will lie at noon. The room anticipates you. Hardness arrives as a list that never needs to be written down. Water jars are heavy, and they do not feel the need to apologize about it. Firewood argues with the doorframe. The quern makes sure your shoulders grow truthful. The hinge that squeaked yesterday will probably try again today. You keep a thread of oil and a square of cloth ready as evidence that the hinge is not the only creature in this room with a plan. From the back corner, the basket of onions looks like a small moon collection. You hold one in your palm and feel the coolness that vegetables learn down in baskets when they are careful about how they keep one another company. The knife that lives on the wall comes loose from its loop without complaint. On the table, you trim the roots with a tenderness that suggests you believe in future soups. Oil waits in a jar whose belly has learned to be generous and whose neck has learned to be prudent. You make a small saucer of dressing and leave it where taste will find it later and be glad. Through the hatch, a line of light appears, faint, then not. It climbs your wall and tests the ceiling with a fingertip. You breathe with it and almost hum. Your hum would be a little lower than straight happiness and a little higher than plain contentment. You let it be a sound that stays inside your throat because the child next door is still protecting that last thin layer of sleep, and you want them to win that small contest. You pull the clay lid off the seed jar and measure a pinch into a small bowl. The seeds clatter like polite rain. The lid goes back with its important sigh. You rub the seeds between your palms and they release their smell. A traveling scent that seems able to convince the whole room to remember summer. You smile into your hands and dust your loaf-to-be with the summer you've just made. The hearth wants attention. Coals that spent the night being responsible now want the reward of flame. You lean in, arrange twigs to bridge ember to stick, and blow the soft sort of breath that coaxes rather than insists. Flame remembers how to be itself, and for a minute, the lamp looks almost jealous. You admire both, the lamp for its obedience, the fire for its small ambition. You place a pot to the side where heat is modest but trustworthy, and consider what the day might forgive if you try something bolder for breakfast. Steam makes a thought of a line in the air, then gives up on being anything strategic. The pot's lid jiggles once, like it wishes to be included in the conversation. You talk to it anyway, because names and gentle talk make most things less difficult than they plan to be. Easy, you say to the pot, and everything obeys as if it had been their idea. From outside the door, someone calls your name. It is your neighbor, the one whose laugh is narrow at the start and wide at the end. They have come to trade a handful of dates for a scrape of salt and a piece of advice about a hinge that thinks it is a musician. You smile at the dates and put the advice into practice in the next breath. The hinge is less proud now. The neighbor's laugh widens sooner. You talk for a minute about the river's current opinion, about the rumor of honey at market, about sandals that know too much. You promise to look at a crack in their plaster after noon. The crack will not fix itself, and you are a person who stands by what you say, especially if what you say involves straw, clay, and attention. The dough has grown, rounder and more sure of itself. You press your fingertips into it and watch the dents soften, then fade. It is a little like watching a friend forgive something. You divide the dough into loaves and pancakes, some for baking on the warm stone, some for letting the hearth teach slowly. The warm stone tells a small story in dots, marking each loaf with the memory of its hot patience. Pancakes blister at the edge, then sit back down, humbled and delicious. You taste one because tasting is part of the job. The bread bites back, a little, with the grit that stones cannot help leaving in flour. You accept the bargain, bread for grit, food for attention. You pour beer into a cup and drink what feels less like a drink and more like food that changed its mind about solidity. The day will be less sharp because you have done this. Your shoulders give quiet thanks, which in shoulder language sounds like a shorter sigh. Someone outside says something admiring about the smell from your doorway, and then tries not to sound like they had said anything. You pretend not to have heard, and place a loaf on the window ledge so it can share itself with whatever breeze decides to be kind. You turn back to the table and start the small parade of daily tasks that never win prizes, but always win. The jar that needs a fresh seal gets one. The coil of rope gets a new knot in the place where it had an argument with time. The water bucket gets carried to the door, not because it asked, but because you know it will ask later when your hands are already full and your patience smaller. In a corner, the basket that keeps bits of broken pottery for writing notes looks pleasantly untidy. You pick an ostracan fragment with a smooth face and practice a name with a reed dipped in watered ink. The reed scratch is the most polite kind of ambition. It leaves a dark trail that persuades a sound to become a shape and then a meaning, which feels like a magic trick everyone in the room is in on. You blow gently, and the letters become more themselves. The house is small, and so the house is clever. Shelves live where walls meet in tidy agreement. Hooks make a ceiling into a helper. The doorway is a negotiator. It knows how to keep a wall strong and a passage open. You visit each of these small minds with tasks like offerings. A jar put away with gratitude. A folded cloak tucked where the morning will find it without drama. A tool hung where a hand will reach without having to ask the eyes for advice. Your feet know this map so well, they could walk it in the sort of dark that insists it is being helpful. Hardness visits a sweat that gathers even before the sun reaches for the doorknob of the day. You wipe your brow with a cloth that was once a shirt and is now a veteran of many more interesting missions. The cloth knows how to visit your face without scolding it for being a face. It leaves behind a coolness that holds the line for a few brave moments. You are grateful for small soldiers like that. You step outside to greet the light properly. It has found its color, a gold that makes the walls warm the way a well-placed hand makes a shoulder warm. The lane smells of old smoke and bread and something green from a neighbor's courtyard that has decided to be generous. Cats are holding a brief meeting about schedules, which will be ignored. A cart complains about its experience with a stone in the road and then forgets. You shade your eyes with your palm and measure the sun's angle the way a baker measures flour. From long practice and with no need of scales. By the doorway, you check the roof ladder because roof ladders have opinions about neglect. This one approves of attention and rewards it by not wobbling. You set it where the day will want it and feel a private glow at being the sort of person who thinks ahead just enough to make later feel like a gift from earlier. Back inside, You take up the plated basket that keeps fresh rushes for the mats. The mat near the hearth has earned a refreshing. You weave new bands into old, and the old agrees to make room. Your fingers hum with the nimble work. Your mind loosens into something like water. The mat becomes smoother under your hand. Your thoughts become quieter under the mat. When you finish, the room looks as if someone has apologized to it for the last fortnight and the room has accepted. The lamp on the table has been faithful, but its wick shows that short, obstinate curl that suggests it would like guidance. You trim it with a practiced squeeze and feed the bowl a little oil. The lamp sighs a tiny amen. It has its own idea of how much light is the correct amount for mornings, and you respect that. Lamps and mornings are both wiser than people when it comes to patience. People begin to knock with their voices. A neighbor asks if your spare pot can host a stew while their hearth throws a tantrum. You say yes and move a few things as if the room had always wanted to be arranged this way. Another neighbor needs a strap mended. They hold it out like an apology. You mend it like a conversation. The strap and the neighbor both leave looking as if they have remembered something useful about being steady. You sit for a moment with your back to the wall and your knees up. The wall shares its cool with you. The cup shares its beer with you. The bread shares its grit and its goodness with you in a bargain you find increasingly charming. You think about the day's larger tasks: water at the shaduf, lines and dust at the work cut, a list to sign in the shade with a scribe who likes to pretend lists are jokes everyone enjoys. You think about the smaller tasks: hinges, mats, jars, sandals, and how the smaller ones teach the larger ones how to behave. There is a rhythm to daylight that your body knows before your mouth could explain it. Kneel, rise, lift, set down, stretch, bend, breathe, wait. At some point, you will laugh at something plain and honest. At a goat who believes a rope is a suggestion, or at a child who tells a story that is 60% truth and 40% courage. You do not dread any of this. You simply prepare, the way a pot prepares to hold water by being what it is and nothing smarter. You go to the storage nook and look at the jars arranged like a choir. Some sing of grain, some sing of oil, one or two of honey, or something that wants to be honey when it grows up. You tap a jar and hear the sound that tells you how much is left. You can read a jar the way a scribe reads a line. Worth is not always visible from the top. Sometimes it is visible in the way a sound sits in the air afterwards. You make a note in your own head. This much for today, that much for the next. And trust your memory, which has become competent because you have fed it with attention rather than worry. You strip a twig of leaves and lay it near the hearth for kindling later. You tie a new knot in the rope, whose old knot had beliefs about freedom. You sigh, the rope sighs. You both agree on a middle way. You set aside a little flour and a little patience for an old woman down the lane who will pretend she does not need it and then be glad anyway. You arrange the loaves on the ledge and pull the mat back into a shadow so the air can do its cooling without interruption. By now, the light outside has become something you could weigh in your palm. It is heavier than dawn, but not as heavy as noon. The alley begins its comings and goings, sandals whispering dust, voices conducting morning's business by the same melody they used yesterday and will use tomorrow. You lean in the doorway and let the day see you being exactly ready. The day likes that. It behaves better for people who behave as if it will. But first, a little work for the shoulders you will ask so much of later. You lift the water jar to the courtyard basin and pour with the sort of carefulness that has nothing to prove. The jar's curve and your wrist's arc conduct a graceful duet that would make a scribe jealous if scribes allowed themselves to be jealous of wrists. Your feet find the damp place the pour leaves behind and do not mind. The basin gives the plants the sort of drink that makes their leaves shine like yes. When you step back inside, the house smells like the kind of morning a house hopes to have. Bread, a hint of smoke, the clean clay of jars, a small brag of oil. You sit on the low stool that has known you at 11 kinds of tired and 4 kinds of restless, and all of them have been acceptable. You place your palms on your thighs, close your eyes, and practice the art of being a person who is not in a hurry to begin a day that has already begun without scolding you about it. Someone knocks, not a voice this time, but a touch. You open. The neighbor child with new sandals that insist on their noise stands there with a reed basket and the kind of grin that makes your own mouth remember how. They are selling nothing and offering everything. A tiny errand, a honey rumor, a string of nonsense that will make the long walk to the river feel like a shorter one. You give them a heel of bread and a job. Carry this note to the scribe in the shade and tell him you will be there after the river has remembered itself. The child nods with a gravity that does not fit their eyebrows and goes, sandals striking a treaty with the dust. You write the note on the pottery shard because pottery understands messages better than most things that once held figs. The reed pen leaves its precise brown line and seems pleased to have been trusted. You think, not for the first time, that the world is full of small, competent objects doing their jobs without applause. You try to be one of them. When you are, the day thanks you, though not in words. The dough has a last rise in it. You touch it, and your fingertips' print fills almost as soon as you lift away. The loaf is ready to become itself. You set it on the warm stone and listen to the tiny hisses that say, the thing is happening that always happens and always feels like a surprise anyway. A raw thing becoming a finished thing because it was given heat and time, and someone kept watch. Hardness makes a last visit before you leave. The water jar must be swung onto the shoulder. You grip it the way you were taught. One hand at the base, one steadying the neck, chin to rim for balance, a little proud, a little careful. Your shoulder argues, then yields. Your back considers filing a complaint and decides to wait until noon, when complaints make more sense. You take 3 testing steps, and the jar decides to believe in you again. At the threshold, you check the bar, even though you know you said it. Your palm hears the truth in the wood. The notch is a small cave where certainty sleeps. You lift the bar, set it aside, and feel the door wheel a fraction on its hinge with the specific relief of a thing that has been oiled well and will mention it only if asked. You step into the lane, and the lane accepts. Before you go, you turn back once, because turning back once is a blessing, not a superstition. The room holds its order, like a song holds its melody, after the singer takes a breath. The lamp sits on the table with a look that says it is content without being proud of it. The mat is a flat promise on the floor. The bowl is clean in the way a bowl is clean when it has just fed someone and believes it will again you swallow. Not because of emotion, though there is a little of that, but because swallowing is how a throat says yes. You lift the loaf on the ledge and tuck it into the fold of your cloak. You take the reed broom and lean it by the door in the exact angle where tomorrow will find it and say, "Ah, there you are." You touch the lamp's rim. It is warm and agreeable. The wick makes a sound too small to be worth writing down, which is exactly the sort of sound a wick should make. Out in the lane, light has begun to weigh more. Shadows develop their opinions. The air decides to smell like 10 kinds of breakfast at once. A woman laughs and frightens 3 pigeons. The pigeons forgive her. A man clears his throat as if he is about to sing, and then does not. 2 cats decide they were always meant to walk in the same direction. The world reintroduces itself to itself. You nod like a neighbor. You are ready for the river, for the shaduf's faithful arc, for the tally in the shade, for the measured blows in the stone later. First, you make a last small stop. You step back into the room, only a pace, only a breath. You look at the ember in the hearth, and the flame in the lamp, and the quiet in the corners, and say, without sound, "Keep this. Keep it exactly like this." The ember agrees by being exactly what it is, a small, hot city that will wake up at evening to tell stories by light. The lamp agrees by making no fuss at all. The house agrees by existing in the shape that says it remembers you. You turn to the door again and pass through. Morning unfolds its clean sheet over the roofs. You step into it with bread and beer and patience and the sort of stride that tells the day you are not here to win a race. You are here to walk the road that was made for walking. Behind you, the lamp remains, not jealous, not lonely, just breathing, the quietest companion, holding for you the little warmth that will become evening again. You think, as the alley elbows you gently toward its opening, that a home is a promise made in both directions. The ember keeps yours, you will keep its. The day will have its demands, its dust and its distances. The morning has already given you its language. You understand it. And somewhere just beyond the corner, where the alley straightens into the path to the river, you can feel the Nile inhale. You smile because you remember how to exhale. You are walking toward the bank with a coil of rope over your arm and the kind of steadiness that comes from already having earned your breakfast. Sand sifts around your sandals, approving of your pace. The path widens by habit, where many feet have made the same choice for many mornings. Ahead, reeds tilt their long ears to the breeze as if to listen for your approach. A heron makes a note in its daybook and pretends not to watch you. The light has warmed from gold to coin bright. The Nile holds the morning like a calm chest holds its treasures, not locked, just quietly sure of itself. At the water's edge, the shaduf waits, a lever with a soft sole. The pole rests on its wooden post. The counterweight is a stone that knows exactly how much it weighs and when to be helpful. The rope bucket looks like a basket that took swimming lessons. You touch each part as you arrive, because touching is how you greet tools that will lift with you. Pole, post, stone, rope. Your hands remember where to close and where to open. The first pull of the day often has opinions. You smile at them and let your shoulder be persuasive. You stand, feet firm in the damp ground, and take the pole in both hands. Down goes the bucket with a friendly gulp. Up comes the counterweight with a dignified nod. The pole bows, your shoulder bows. The water rises to meet you. You swing the bucket, pour into the channel's mouth, and watch the small stream choose its way between banks you smoothed yesterday when you were practicing future kindness. The second pole agrees with the first. The third understands the pattern and decides to cooperate. Rhythm has found you again. Around you, the riverbank is a neighborhood of labor. Two men share a shaduf downstream and argue courteously about whose turn it is to count. A woman with a baby tied against her hip shows a teenager the proper way to pack wet mud into the edge of a channel, as if the channel were a guest who likes its cushions plumped. On the far side, a boat slides by, with jars strapped like well-behaved children. The boatman steers with a long oar and a longer patience. He raises a hand. You raise your chin, because hands are busy and chins have their uses. The sun is honest from the beginning. No flirting, no shy business behind clouds. It puts its warm hand on the back of your neck to be sure you can feel it. You can. You tie a strip of linen around your head and across your nose, a little banditry that makes breathing kinder when the wind decides to discuss dust at volume. The linen learns your sweat and decides to be loyal. You inhale through fabric that smells like work and clean water and the faint, legible memory of soap. The day moves from pages to paragraphs. Each lift is a sentence. Down, up, swing, pour. The channel takes the water as if it had been practicing acceptance all night. It pays what it owes in shine. A frog announces that the puddle you made is an empire. You permit the exaggeration. Your hands harden gently against the pole, trading skin for certainty. On the fifth lift, you feel the wide muscles at the top of your back join the conversation. On the seventh, they begin to enjoy themselves. On the ninth, they appoint themselves foreman, and your legs nod at their new responsibilities. A scribe sets up in the shade of a tamarisk and lays his reed kit on a board across his knees. He is a neighbor in a different uniform. He chews the edge of one reed to make it obedient and squares his shoulders in the way of people who find order soothing. You know his name, and he knows yours. And between you is the cordial understanding that lists are a kind of song when sung properly. He nods, you nod. He writes, you lift. Everyone does the right thing at the right time, which is the world's favorite genre of music. The counterweight gives its small blessing again and again. You adjust your stance once and feel the difference cascade. Knee easier, spine straighter, breath fuller. You make a note in your body's ledger. Keep this stance. The ledger is happy because it likes clean entries made in ink that does not run. The ledger is you. You will consult it later when the sun speaks louder and the bucket tries new opinions. Between lifts, you notice the particulars that make the day itself. Dragonflies staging acrobatics above your channel. A hawk drawing a fine thread across the sky. The way the river's surface pretends to be flat until a hand of wind smooths the place where a ripple was about to think better of itself. Fishermen laugh behind you at a joke about a net that believed it could catch wisdom and caught weeds instead. Someone farther downriver sneezes like a trumpet and apologizes to the air. The air forgives them. You take a pause that is not quite a pause. only a shallower breath between longer ones, and sip beer from a jar that has been waiting in the shade like a friend content to be the second thought rather than the first. Cool liquid becomes cool body. The jar's rim has that particular smoothness of clay used often and cared for exactly as often. You set it back into its nest of damp reeds and return to the work that requires you and rewards you in exactly the same measure. Raise, swing, pour. Down the bank, 2 children have been sent to learn their first shaduf. Their teacher, a grandmother whose eyes have seen more flood years than most roofs, shows them how to plant feet like arguments and how to use the counterweight's polite eagerness. The bucket dips with a splash that suggests the river is ticklish. Everyone smiles. The grandmother nods her approval like a judge awarding a prize for sincerity. Mid-morning arrives dressed as lunchtime in a hotter climate. You feel sweat navigate your temples with the single-mindedness of explorers. The linen at your nose is damp. You wring it and set it back where breath will find it gentler. The pole's wood warms under your hands. Your grip loosens slightly at the top of each lift to say, "I see you. I'm not strangling you. We are partners." The pole appreciates partnership. It has opinions about being gripped like a branch in a storm and prefers this better way. A barge noses close to shore, heavy with reeds and rumors. Its crew asks if the bank is soft enough for a quick tie. You point with your chin toward a post that remembers ropes the way old friends remember each other's jokes. They lash the boat. The knot sits down properly with its legs politely crossed. One man hops off, trades 2 bundles of reed for a small jar of oil, and leaves with a sentence about weather that will be true whether you nod or not. You nod anyway, for practice. The scribe coughs and calls for your name in a tone that is mostly a question mark wearing a polite hat. You say it, and he writes it, and then adds the number of lifts you've done by the method he prefers. Groups and tallies, and a final stroke that makes a little fence. A fly lands on his knee and reads the list upside down. The scribe shoos it without malice and adds the time. He looks up, calculates shade, and offers you his cup of water, because neighbors are what they do as much as who they are. You drink, and the water becomes part of the day that will later become part of the story you tell the lamp. You watch your own hands for a moment from the inside, which is a trick you learned while waiting for dough to rise. Hands, wrists, forearms, tendons standing like small ropes willing to be seen. You admire them for being citizens of a settlement called work, where the taxes are fair and the celebrations are done with bread instead of horns. You lift again, and the counterweight stone recognizes an old friend in your rhythm. It goes up at the same exact speed as your breath goes out. This is choreography and prayer and accounting in one motion. It keeps the field green, and the field keeps you in sandals. Nobody owes anyone apologies for that arrangement. Now, the heat steps forward and asks for more attention. You give it. You rearrange your scarf, trade hands for a dozen lifts to give each a chance to gossip about the other's technique. Then trade back before the gossip grows sharp. You move your feet a handbreadth closer and discover a second balance you like as much as the first. The margin between effort and strain is an alley you now know by feel. You walk that alley politely, greeting strain by name, and telling it you have an appointment elsewhere. Beyond the reeds, cattle bring their slow bells into the day's sentence. Their herder gives them a speech about behaving like kings in a parade. They behave like cows in a field instead. The sun approves of cows that mind their own business. It puts one more ounce of brightness on your shoulders and checks your posture for interesting news. You stand taller than you intended and learn something useful about yourself. A shout travels the bank, stone for the channel wall, and you help with the passing, one hand to the next, a little chain of gravity negotiated with courtesy and grunts. The stones are hot on their tops and cool on their bellies, like arguments that haven't decided which side will win. You set each where it has the best chance of feeling important and employ your heel to nudge the mud into the gaps. When the wall looks like it believes in itself, you brush your hands together and return to the lever that believes in you. By now, you're counting lives in more places than your head. Elbows count, knees count. The rhythm does its own math and posts the answer in your breath. This many buckets, that many heartbeats, all of it equal to water where the soil wants it. You do not ask the soil if it wants it. You are old friends, and it told you yesterday and will tell you again tomorrow with the same kind of weathered honesty that makes friendships good. A fisherman hums a tune about patience and nets. The song has 3 notes and a lot of room for the river to add its harmony. You adopt the tune and find that your arms agree to keep time more sweetly. The bucket dips truer. The swing is cleaner. The splash writes a better letter across the mud. Someone claps once, as if they felt the improvement too. You do not bow, but your shoulders consider it. The scribe's shade moves, and he moves with it, gathering board, palette, water cup, stool, and dignity into a procession that looks like a single thought being carefully relocated. When he sits again, he sighs a small sigh of satisfaction at his own planning, as though he has just performed a complicated ritual correctly. You respect ritual. Your work is one long, kind one. Every lift returns you to the beginning and makes the beginning mean more. You are never starting over. You are continuing with better information. A gust arrives with opinions about everyone's hair. Dust picks favorites, which is rude but also temporary. You turn your face slightly and let the scarf become a small, flexible wall. The bucket still finds water. The channel still glitters like a stripe of patience laid across the field. A child shouts, "Look, look!" at a lizard that is not asked to be looked at. The lizard keeps its appointment with a rock and proves that calm is sometimes the fastest method of travel. You rest, for real this time, not long. Just enough to sit on a stone that has learned how to be a seat the way a river learns how to be an answer. Your breath tidies itself. You rub the back of your neck with a thumb that is trained for this duty. The beer jar gives you a sip that is more idea than liquid. The idea is called enough. You take a bite of onion because your mouth remembers that flavors are a way to tell the rest of you you're alive in a good way. The onion obliges with a clear statement and no confusing subtexts. You laugh quietly at the simplicity of it and decide the day will like you better for this moment. When you stand again, your shadow stands with you, shorter than it will be later, yet already offering its services. You accept only the part you need. The other part you save for noon when gratitude is most efficient. You stretch your arms once, forward, up, out, and hear something in your back say, "Ah, yes, we remember. The shaduf says nothing, which is its way of compliments. Silence from a tool is high praise. You return to the work and notice that now the water feels cooler, which might be true or might be the story your hands tell to keep everyone cheerful. You are not here to argue with hands. You are here to keep a promise. Channel full, field watered, afternoon easier because the morning was brave. The promise keeps you in a line with the river, where you are always equals and never enemies. A new face steps into the shade. A junior overseer, boots clean enough to suggest office and dusty enough to suggest he knows what the office is for. He carries a tally board and the expression of someone who truly would like to keep things tidy. He greets you by name, and you greet him with the nod that means, we will do this together without drama. He counts a few lifts, checks the flow in the channel, squints at the sky as if the sun might reveal the future to anyone who squints hard enough. And then he smiles. The kind of smile that has a job and has just been allowed to do it properly. He leaves you to it. The scribe watches this entire conversation and writes nothing about it, which is also a sentence. Letters arrive by river. A small papyrus bundle tied to a stick bumps the bank and is retrieved like a fish with something interesting to say. It is a note from a cousin upstream. A childbirth that went well. A goat that insists on climbing things not rated for goats. A rumor about a market stall with dates so soft they have to be told sternly to hold their shape. You tuck the message into your belt like a charm. The day grows another small root into your good mood. You borrow a neighbor's rhythm for a dozen lifts. Down, up, swing, pour, with a childlike pause that makes the splash land like a joke. You return to your own after those dozen because your back likes your own jokes better. You are pleased that both rhythms work. It means you are stronger than you thought, and kinder than you remembered, and wise enough to test both without declaring either superior. Just before the proper heat reaches its full argument, you take a short walk along the channels to see what your work has said to the field. The water has already greeted the roots and been invited to stay. Beetles announce opinions that only beetles can understand. A smear of green in the distance looks like a promise and like a memory, both. You kneel, press a palm to damp soil, and feel the cool rise into your hand, like gratitude that has been taught not to embarrass anyone. You wipe your hand on your skirt and return to the pole with a step that has learned from the soil how to be sure of itself without noise. The sun is fair. It burns everyone equally and brightens everyone equally. You respect fairness even when it requires a scarf and more sips from the shaded jar. A group of youths carry bundles of reeds and pretend they are soldiers. The reeds take the game seriously and do not break. A dog sleeps in the precise shape of a loaf of bread. A cluster of ibises hold a meeting in the shallows about the future of small fish. The fish participate as little as possible. Noon sharpens everything. You give the pole one last set of lifts with perfect attention. The way a singer finishes a song with the exact note the song asked for and not a fancy one for applause. The bucket rises and falls like a chest. The channel receives, always the best audience. You wipe the handle with your cloth because leaving tools clean is a story you tell your future self. You set the bucket where it will drip back into the river rather than sulk on the bank. You step back and let your gaze rest where water has drawn new lines over the earth's skin. Shade calls. You answer. The tree behind the scribe has grown larger since you last looked, perhaps out of respect for both of you. You sit on a rock that prefers sitting to being ignored. The scribe offers a date, which you accept as if it were a jewel. The date, for its part, tastes like a jewel that decided sweetness is better than shining. A breeze finds your neck, and your neck had been waiting for exactly that, and tells your shoulders that all is forgiven. The shoulders, in turn, forgive the morning, which did not need forgiving, but appreciates being included. Lunch is bread and onion, which is the sort of statement that should be written on a wall somewhere in nice letters. Bread and onion, and beer that has kept the cool the jar taught it to keep. You eat slowly, because slow eating makes the body believe in tomorrow. You watch the river continue to do river things without checking to see if you are impressed. You are impressed. You do not make a fuss. The scribe, now in his best mood, traces a line in the dust with his reed and shows a child how numbers behave when they are asked to stand in rows. The child is initially suspicious, then delighted, then superior, and you are amused at how quickly superiority is available to small mathematicians. The scribe winks at you as if to say that superiority in proper doses is a spice and not a meal. You agree with your eyelids, which is a language adults learn when their mouths are full of bread. After lunch, the air loosens its fingers a fraction. Not much, just enough to let you consider the afternoon as a companion rather than a test. You rinse your scarf in the river and wring it until it drips a small ceremony back into the water. You retie it on your head, and the coolness sits like a blessing. You stand, stretch, and the stone you sat on keeps your shape for a moment, as if it is unwilling to return you to the general category of person. You thank the stone with a touch. Afternoon work is the softer cousin of morning's insistence. The channels are full enough to manage with fewer lifts and more tending. You walk their lengths with a stick, encouraging flow here, smoothing collapse there, pinching a breach closed with a handful of mud that oozes through your fingers like gratitude. The sun steps 2 paces toward the west and remembers how to be a painter. Shadows mix themselves into cool and pour along the bank. The hawk from earlier trades altitude for style and glides as if paid. You and the scribe exchange a story apiece. Nothing extravagant. The hinge that behaved, the lost bead that was not lost after all, a friend's letter that arrived tied to a stick like a modest festival. He tells you he once tried to fish and found it too similar to writing, too much waiting for a line to move. You counter that writing is fishing for thoughts. He laughs kindly and returns to his reed. You return to your stick, which prefers understatements. The overseer returns, this time without his tally, because in the afternoon even tally men understand that watching is sometimes enough. He stands for a few minutes, confirms with his eyes what the channels have to say, and then helps lift the counterweight onto the bank so it will not take a night swim. He surprises himself with the small pleasure of doing a thing with his hands, and this pleasure surprises you less than it surprises him. He leaves before either of you has to name it. Boatmen sing a work song that has only two words, hey and ho, and at least 8 meanings, all of which apply and none of which require explanation. The river offers a bass line. The reeds applaud by being reeds. You find yourself singing too, in a voice that no one can hear individually and that everyone can feel together. If you were to put your hand on the day's chest, you would feel it humming. Heat, having made its point, allows the breeze to violate it in small ways. A faint taste of silt travels in the air, earthy, and not at all apologetic. You breathe it and know the difference between dust that wants to be in your throat and silt that wants to be in your memory. The difference matters to no one and to you, which is the definition of knowledge that keeps people company. By late afternoon, the shaduf creaks in a manner that suggests it will benefit from a little attention later. Oil on the pivot, a new notch for the rope. You make a mental list that is not stern. The list includes also the broom at home, the patch in the neighbor's plaster, and a fig you have saved to eat where the lamp can watch and feel honored. You lift twice more because twice more feels ceremonially correct. Then you settle the pole at rest and tie the bucket so that wind cannot give it bad ideas. You walk the length of your work and practice praise, not for yourself, but for the arrangement. Water here, a gleam that argues well with dusk, a turn there, smart as a fox, a wall that stood proud, another that will need mending after a night of thinking about its life choices. Praise is the correct kind of magic. It changes already good things into better ones and then into habits. When you reach the scribe, he has a last line for you to witness. The day totaled in neat strokes, the sum not large or small, but exact. You love exact. Exact means your shoulders can put the day down without wondering whether anything still needed you. You sign with the line that belongs to your name and watch it dry into the record of a day good enough to be tomorrow's teacher. A child hands you a reed whistle as payment for letting them dip their toes where your channel kisses the bank. You take the whistle and pretend you do not know how to play it. You play it anyway, and it produces a note that seems to disappoint even itself. This is the correct result. Everyone laughs exactly once. The laugh is a drink you share. You rinse your hands in the river. The water below the surface is cooler, as if the river has a secret compartment for careful people. Your palms come up beaded and clean. Your fingers flex, and consider writing a letter to the muscles in your back, complimenting them on their performance. No letter is necessary. Everyone knows. You shoulder the coil of rope and take one last look at the lever that made you equal to weight today. Tools and hands understand each other in your language. You speak it not with words, but with efforts that fit. You step back from the bank, the way a guest steps back from a threshold. Thank you without fuss. You turn toward the path home, and the path, like all good paths, makes room. As you walk, the river accompanies you just out of sight, a companion who respects silence. The day leans toward evening. The colors put down their tools. Your scarf loosens of its own accord, having done enough for honor. A hawk's last arc writes a sentence at sky level. Work finished is work which can be trusted to return. You agree. Your shoulders agree by forgetting themselves for a while, which is their form of applause. Near the corner where the reeds thicken, A small boy practices lever tricks with a stick and a stone. You show him how to move his fulcrum closer, and his mouth opens in that universal O of small revelation. You do not say any grand words about principles. You let the stone teach him instead. He runs off to tell someone that lifting is a form of thinking. You hope he never forgets. Between field and lane, you pause, half to admire the river's broader curve, half to teach your breath where it will live tonight when the roof is cool. In and at and out, 4 and 6. The numbers are not rules. They are friends who walk you to your door and then go home. You watch the water gather the last light and give it back in long pieces. The day has been honest. The river has been itself. You have been exactly you. When the roof learns your footsteps later, when the lamp breathes, when the house remembers, you will tell the quiet what you learned again today. That motion, properly made, is rest by another name. That water lifts because hands do. That a promise kept by a channel is a promise kept by a person. That your rhythm is a way of speaking, and the river answers in the same language. For now, you take the first warm stone of the pal like a compliment. You smile at the fig, saved in your pocket like a secret. You touch the coil of rope against your palm, and it touches back. Grateful to have held something that mattered. You step into the lane, and the lane, dust, voices, shadows, welcomes you into the long exhale of afternoon, which is the doorway to evening, which is the invitation to night, which is where the lamp lives, breathing. The river keeps its part of the sentence. You keep yours. Your rhythm walks beside you until the roof takes it up and makes a lullaby of it. The lamp loves a lullaby. The river knows all the words. The river answers your rhythm. You are walking into light that behaves like a blessing. The lane unwinds, then the path, then the low shoulder of desert where earth begins to change its mind about softness. Far behind, roofs sit square and companionable. Ahead, limestone rises with the quiet pride of something that has decided to last. Your sandals keep time with your breath. The coil of rope at your hip taps your thigh in a friendly way, as if to say, yes, we are going somewhere worth the tap. The workman's village waits against the slope, a small geometry of houses that know each other by heart. Doors turn the color of baked bread in morning light. Children play a complicated game that looks like counting but sounds like laughing. A woman pours water from a jar into a basin and makes a tiny rainbow that minds its own business. You greet faces you know by sound, faces you know only as shapes that belong where the path bends. Neighbors here carry yesterday's dust, the way potters carry clay, usefully, without apology. At the edge of the village, tools greet you without speaking. Copper chisels lie in a roll of leather like well-behaved relatives waiting to be invited into a room. Mallets drowse against a wall, heads nicked with the small biographies of yesterday's blows. A plumb line hangs from a peg, a patient reed, and a weight that knows one thing perfectly and never argues about it. Red ochre crouches in its pot, like a captured sunset, willing to be shared with stone, so that stone may remember straightness and curve. You set your bundle down and unwrap the chisels. Each has a personality you've learned with the care one gives to friends. The one that bites gentle, the one that persuades stubborn grain, the one that sings when a line is true, the one you keep out of trouble by giving it important but not glamorous tasks. You touch their edges with a stone and a hum. Edges return the favor with readiness. The mallet fits your palm, as if your hand had been carved to match it. You check the lashings and the head's good manners. The mallet nods without nodding. The foreman calls your crew with the tone of someone inviting people to do what they already want to do. You follow the path that sometimes is a path and sometimes is only the shared decision of feet. The entrance into stone is low and deliberate. You bow without a thought and let your eyes draw in the light like water poured into a cool jar. Inside, the air is not dark so much as close. The rock keeps the outside world at a respectful distance. Your breath widens to fill the space that light does not fill yet. You like it here, the way sound keeps secrets and gives them back shaped differently, the way dust makes tiny stars in the lamplight. Lamps take their places on ledges, shallow saucers of flame that breathe in a steady circle. They make rings of gold on limestone, little planets that do not wobble. You put one just behind your shoulder, where it will watch your hands and not scold your eyes. The wick remembers its job, and the oil behaves as if it was born to climb cotton. This is light that cooperates, the kind you can think beside. The first duty is drawing. Walls accept the red ochre with gratitude. Your reed brush, trimmed and stubborn, lays a line that knows which way is up because the plumb line told it. You mark out borders, bands, and the patient rooms within which hands will speak to stone. A colleague holds the other end of a string dusted with ochre. You pluck it, and it leaves a straight whisper on the wall. The whisper becomes instruction. The stone would say, "Thank you," if stone said things out loud. Next comes persuasion. You choose the chisel that made friends with this particular grain last season and set its mouth to the red. The mallet lifts and falls with the courtesy of someone returning a borrowed cup. Tap, tap, tap. The sound is not loud, but it insists gently. Limestone listens. Powder rises like fine snow that once thought about being a cloud. Chips learn how to leap in neat parabolas and land exactly where they should, as if gravity had written a memo. You lean into the angle that keeps the face true and the edge obedient. Your shoulders begin the day's letter to your back. Your back writes back. Understood. A rhythm arrives and takes its seat. 3 blows and move. 2 blows and adjust. A soft scrape to check flatness with the chisel set sideways. A whispering rake over the fresh edge. Then 3 more at a slightly different courage. You do not count in numbers. You count in agreements. Tool with hand, hand with stone, stone with idea. The idea is not fancy. It is walls that will hold stories, corridors that will hold coolness, corners that will fold air into pleasing shapes. The mallet knows this and behaves. Dust settles on your forearms in a quiet bloom. It makes you look pale and priestly, while your breath informs everyone present that you are very much a person using muscles in a small cave. Someone coughs the kind of cough that is part of the work and not a complaint. A water jar passes hand to hand like a memory that has not been said out loud yet. You drink. The jar's rim is friendly. The water is cool and tastes faintly of the pot stand, where it learned patience overnight. You hand it on and receive in exchange the small, approving glance of a person whose day became easier because your hand was where a jar needed to be. The scribe arrives at the threshold like a thought deciding to become a sentence. He chooses a seat where shade will visit regularly and presses his board across his knees. His palette shows the usual stains. Black, that means names. Red, that means caution. Brown, that means someone's hands were still dusty when they did the good thing. He nods at the foreman, at you, at the wall, which returns the nod by existing. He writes something that will make sense later to someone who wasn't here and needs to know that today happened properly. You measure depth with the chisel itself, laid across the shoulder of the groove. True. A little more here, less there. A tenderness at the edge that keeps the future plaster honest. You imagine the plaster's pale skin taking the place of the bare rock, and your hands adjust to make that future more likely. You do not decorate yet. First, you make the world ready to receive decoration, which is its own art. Outside, heat begins its steady conversation with the day. Inside, coolness holds a little longer. The rocks stored night leaking out in a kindness measured in degrees you feel with your cheek rather than your cleverness. A friend down the corridor starts their own pattern. Tap, tap, scrape, tap, tap, scrape. And the two of you make a quiet duet that sounds like patience humming. When someone drops a tool, the sound travels around the corner and returns slightly foreshortened, as if distance were a cloth that had been washed just enough times. The foreman checks the line you have drawn and the depth you have kissed out of the stone. He does not say much, which in foreman language counts as a compliment with extra honey. He runs a finger along the cut, feels for honesty, and grunts. You grunt back. Two poets would call this call and response. Two workers call it being on the same side as the stone. There is laughter that knows how to keep its voice down. A joke about a chisel that believes it is a priest. A story about a goat that followed someone into the entrance and decided it was too much like a cave, which is to say, too much like a goat's own diary, and retreated with dignity. A remark about rations that will never make it into the scribe's notes, but will live in everyone's pockets anyway. You smile without using your teeth, and the day feels itself settle into the correct gear. You step back to wet the ochre with a breath of water, and suddenly the red dreams brighter. It pleases you, the way small decisions can improve a whole wall. You draw another line, this one a curve that will curl into a border, like a friend's arm around another friend. You mark a door's lintel and its toe. You set a point where the future eyes will go to rest. You think of the lamp at home, of how it draws a circle around itself and declares the circle safe. You try to make that shape in stone, a circle of safety you can walk into. The chisels take turns like well-brought-up children playing a long game. Broad chisel for the swath, narrow for the edge, tooth for the roughening that lets plaster grip. Each has its favorite sound, and the mallet learns the notes one by one, until the tune is a thing you could hum in your sleep. You raise a corner, high enough to require a stool, and the stool does its brave work. You climb, you ask more of your shoulders, and they answer with a new script. Lighter, quicker, knowing when to get out of the way of your breath. Hours fold. You read them in the line of brightness at the entrance and in the way the stone warms under your palm. Someone sets a lamp higher on a ledge. It makes the room grow a new, soft sun. 2 handspans above your head. You sweep dust into a pan with a brush made of bundled palm fiber and a good habit of not stirring trouble. The pan fills, empties, fills again. The day's small tide. When the foreman calls the pause, you set the mallet aside like a friend who needs a nap and go to the threshold where air rehearses being sky again. Lunch looks like the reliable kindness it always looks like. Bread with its clean grit, and onion with its simple, declarative mood. A date for dessert, perhaps 2 if the second is shy and wants a companion. Beer that behaves like a sturdy good idea. You sit with your back to the rock and let the stone apprentice itself to the art of being a chair. Across from you, the scribe modifies his posture like a person trying on several opinions and keeping the one that does not pinch. Conversation stays under the roof of the pause. Work stories are told with the pride that has learned how to be modest without lying. Someone demonstrates a new way to tie a cord to a bucket that uses fewer knots and more intelligence. Everyone agrees silently to pretend they knew it already. You mend a leather strap with a needle made to behave by spit and attention. A colleague shows you a chip where the stone wanted to be more generous than you wanted it to be. Together, you plot a correction that allows both of you to save face. Heat has found the slope now. It lies down like a cat on every surface that will take it. Your scarf holds the part of your head that prefers shade. A wet rag behind your neck makes a treaty between pride and comfort. You stand again and return to the wall, and the wall greets you with the kind of welcome given by work that remembers being interrupted and did not hold it against anyone. Afternoon is for refinement. Where morning bit, afternoon smooths. Where morning opened, afternoon introduces manners. You set the tooth chisel aside and take up the flat one with its wide, honest mouth. Tap, tap. Ridges become plains. Scrape, sweep. Plains become invitations. Your hand moves in circles that would make sense to the quernstone at home. Your arm finds the pendulum it learned from the shaduf. All the day's work is related to all the other work. The body keeps a family tree of motions and introduces cousins to one another in rooms like this. The scribe steps in to mark a measure. How far? How deep? How much to claim by end of day? He writes without fuss. A reed's hair-making lines that will explain you to tomorrow. You do not mind being explained if the explanation is clean. You adjust your pace to live inside the number he has chosen. It is not a small number. It is a fair one. Fairness keeps morale tidy. Dust will not be reasoned with. Dust accepts only the broom's arguments, and even then sometimes only pretends. You sweep anyway, because sweeping is about intention as much as result. The room looks back at you with a smoothed brow. You decide to believe the broom has won, and the broom, pleased with your confidence, works harder than it meant to. A lamp wick sulks. You pinch it, trim, and feed. Its flame returns to its better self. The room's little planets resume their orbits. In the corner, a figure preps plaster, mixing it on a board with water in a dance that could be prayer if you tilted your head. The plaster behaves, thickening to a polite cream, ready to hold a future painted breath. For a moment, you watch the paddling motion, the sweep and fold, and you feel in your wrists the echo of kneading dough in the morning. Bread, plaster, river, Each asks for circles and rewards them. You test a freshly smoothed plane with your palm. It is cool still, and just shy of silk. You could rest your cheek there, and the wall would count it as a vow. Instead, you mark with ochre the places where figures will stand later, their feet planted like arguments that are too graceful to offend. You leave notes for your future self in the language of lines. Start here. Leave room there. Remember the curve with your whole shoulder. Reading your own handwriting in red on stone makes you smile in a way that is almost a secret and entirely earned. Someone sings a verse about a foreman who fell in love with a plumb line because it was the only thing in his life that never lied. The verse traveled a long way to get here. It is frayed at the edges and sweeter for the wear. You carry the tune for a line and pass it on. The mallet keeps time in, one hard syllable, one soft. The chisel writes in a dialect the wall has decided to understand. A child appears at the entrance, exactly waist-high to your sense of humor. They bring a message from home. A neighbor will come by later for the promised plaster patch. Honey made its shy appearance at the market. You are invited to admire a new set of beads chosen by someone who would like their admirers to be discerning but generous. The child waits for acknowledgement in the way of children, which is to say, with the attention of every god and the patience of none. You offer a heel of bread and a sip of beer, watched by an older eye, and the child's grin demonstrates the festival that can be held inside a small mouth. Back to the wall. You adjust your grip to a lighter conversation. The margin of a panel wants a crispness that feels like sheets snapped straight across a palette at home. You give it that snap with the edge of the flat chisel. The line glints, a proof that lime has a sense of pride. You soften the interior with strokes that forget they are strokes. Your breath slows, your hearing deepens. The chisel and the mallet talk around you as neighbors do. Not to you, not against you, but with you in the room where everyone knows why they came. When your hands finally ask for a pause, you put them in the basin someone set by the entrance and let water make its quiet arguments up your wrists. It rinses powder you did not know you'd collected. It leaves the smell of clay and day. You shake your hands and they feel renewed in the way a promise feels renewed when someone says it aloud at just the right moment. Light moves, and with it, the little yellow suns of the lamps. You lift one and set it where it will not bully the eye and will flatter the work. The wick smiles. Flame likes to be placed carefully. You and flame have this in common. A breath of outside air brings in the afternoon's thin cool and the rumor of evening cooking. Onion's honesty, bread's quiet optimism, something like cumin pretending to be important and succeeding. The foreman strolls through with his hands behind his back, a gesture that means he is thinking kindly and wants the room to know it. He stops at your panel, tilts his head like a bird considering a shiny thing, and traces the curve of a border with the shadow of a finger. Good, he says, a word that in here is worth a long poem outside. He moves on, and your shoulders stand a little taller inside your shirt without asking permission. A small repair to your mallet's lashing becomes a lesson for a younger hand at the next panel. You show them how the cord wants to cross itself, how to pull just enough, how to tuck the last bit so that it keeps its dignity. They nod with exaggerated seriousness, then do it correctly, then pretend they always knew. You salute their pretense with your eyes. We are all in the business of knowing a little more every day and pretending we knew it yesterday. It keeps the world moving without embarrassment. By late afternoon, stone dust and sweat have combined into a new sort of paint across your forearms, the hue of effort. You wipe the surface with a damp cloth and reveal the skin you recognize. The cloth turns the color of work, and you rinse it out, watching the water integrate your day and carry it away in a modest ceremony. You set the cloth on a ledge to dry, and it reheats gently, smelling faintly of lime, river, and soap. There is a last task you want before the day pulls its curtain. A corner where the wall meets the ceiling needs to agree on a line that has been thinking about rebellion. You take the plumb line in hand, hold its weight, and let it come to stillness. The quiet it makes is a kind of music you trust. When it has finished any last tiny arguments with air, you draw along it with your brush charged with red. The line slides down obediently, a well-bred river on a small journey. You smile because obedience, when freely given, is a form of beauty. The scribe appears once more with the day's accounting. He reads it out like a priest reading weather. Chisels maintained, depth achieved, square of surface prepared, plaster mixed, tools to be oiled, cord to be replaced. He says your name with the cadence of appreciation and writes a little mark that means the foreman also nodded. You put your thumbprint by the line, a small brown moon that says, present, willing, accountable. The scribe blows on the page. The page accepts its new responsibilities. Packing tools is a gratitude. The mallet goes first, head cradled, handle wrapped, so it will not announce itself to neighbors while traveling. Chisels slide into their leather rooms, edges kissed with oil, bodies hugged, so they will not clang in their sleep. The plumb line folds into a coil that looks like a serpent taking a nap with all its good intentions intact. The ochre pot receives its lid, and the lid receives your palm, and the circle of those two receives your thanks. Outside, the slope has learned evening. Shadows lie down in the breaks of the ground and do not get up again. A breeze tests your scarf and decides you have done well. You stand a moment and let your back decide how much of its opinion to share. It settles on a paragraph, and you tell it you will read the rest later with a warm jar against the troublesome sentence. The walk through the village is a moving inventory of the ordinary riches you are always in danger of forgetting to count. A toddler demonstrates the invention of running with the solemnity of a new god. Two women exchange a bowl with the formal gestures of people who know the bowl is not the only thing moving between them. A friend under a doorway lifts a hand that says both later and always. The smell of stew becomes the smell of a particular stew. You identify it with the accuracy of a hunter who has hunted only recipes. If a joke can be soup, this is that joke. A neighbor shows you the crack you promised to patch. Straw, clay, and water become one brave idea under your fingers. You press it in. The wall eats well and looks less worried. The neighbor nods with the satisfaction of a person whose world fits together again. You say nothing about payment, which here means everything necessary has already been exchanged. Your own door behaves. The bar lifts and sets down without fuss. Inside, air remembers cool, and cool remembers you. You set the tool roll where it will sleep, and the lamp where it will live. You take off your scarf, and it sighs like a relieved cat. You wash your hands in a basin that has been waiting all day to be important. The water runs cloudy, then clear. Your fingers look new, but are not. They are exactly as old as your life, and exactly as honest as the day. You climb to the roof with the first star in your pocket, which is to say, with the idea of a star in your head, which is to say, with satisfaction that prefers to be called quiet instead of pride. The ladder accepts your feet, the roof receives you, the mat invites you to test the angle between your spine and the evening. You oblige, and the angle is right. Bread and onion again, yes, and a fig that decided you had earned it by thinking of it instead of eating it at noon. Beer that is less cold now, but more companionable. Air that describes the day back to you without correcting anything you loved about it. You tell the lamp the story, how the stone decided to cooperate, how the plumb line pretended to be a song, how the foreman said good, how dust tried to adopt you, and you almost said yes. The lamp breathes. The flame wavers once in the little wind, approval perhaps, and then resumes its round. You think of the wall down in the hill wearing its red instructions, of a future when plaster will skim across it and paint will make it speak in colors. You think of your hand's part in that future, and you do not make too big a deal of it. You simply let yourself be exactly content. If there is a small hurt in your wrist, you offer it a wrapped jar that releases warmth slowly, like a story poured from a careful storyteller. If there is a doubt in your head about tomorrow's edge, you place the doubt on the roof's low wall and let the night look at it until it becomes smaller and then becomes the sort of thing that does not need a name. If there is a joke at the back of your mouth about the scribe's neatness, you let it commute into a smile and stop there. It is good to stop where goodness asks you to. Neighbors claim their roofs. The village becomes a quiet constellation of families. The way the sky is a loud constellation of stars. Someone plays a string very softly, and the tune behaves as if it had been born in a pocket and is shy to be in the air. Dogs proofread the alley and find it acceptable. The desert beyond the slope cools like a great sleeping back turning toward shade. You breathe, in for 4, out for 6. You count with the part of you that counts water at the shaduf, and the part that counts blows against stone, and the part that counts blessings but uses other words. The lamp answers by doing what it does, staying. The river answers from below, the long animal of it reminding you that it keeps moving even while you, wise creature, allow stillness to use your body as its house for a while. The day you carried here in your shoulders and wrists becomes lighter in a way that has nothing to do with gravity and everything to do with completion. The wall waits to be a wall. The chisels sleep. The mallet dreams of being a drum and will not be allowed. The plumb line dreams of being consulted by the stars and does not need to be. The red ochre waits in its pot like a small domestic sunset held close for morning. You turn on your side. The mat moves a little and then remembers what it meant to you. You let your mind spill its last few bright thoughts into a bowl by the lamp, the place where the day keeps its coins until morning wants to spend them. One by one, the thoughts become coins, then pebbles, then nothing that needs a name. The lamp breathes. The river answers. The stars vote unanimously for sleep. You accept the result with grace. Under your cheek, the roof is warm, then cooler, then nothing but roof, because you have joined the temperature of the world. You imagine the line of red at the top of your panel, the one that will guide you in the morning, the one that looks like a path and is. You follow it with your breath into the kind of dark that is not absence but kindness. The lamp breathes. The river answers. The stone somewhere below keeps the day you gave it. Lamp imagined even under sun. You are threading the narrow cool of market shade. A line of woven mats. A row of palm leaf awnings. A lane of patience where the sun is taught to mind its manners. The ground underfoot is tamped smooth by feet that have believed in this place for years. Air smells like onion and baking, and the clean tin of river water, and the sweet rumor that sometimes means honey. You carry a basket, and the kind of attention that makes a small list into a success. Oil, a strap, a few seeds, a bit of thread, a coil of good gossip if it's on offer. Stalls announce themselves with a restraint you appreciate. Pottery is stacked by size and intention. Cooking, keeping, carrying, pouring. The potter's hands are still a little red from yesterday's kiln, and he lifts a jar to his ear as if clay keeps a heartbeat. You touch the rim of a bowl, and the bowl answers with the language of smoothness. Beside him, the rope seller keeps his wares in circles that look like patient snakes hoping for employment. You test a length the way a sailor tests wind, by imagining what it will forgive. The beadmaker holds up a string of faience, blue that remembers the sky it borrowed from, green that remembers plants pretending to be jewels. The beads are cool against your palm. They clink like bottled sky. You think of a neighbor who has been saving a coin in a jar to buy a string for a daughter with eyes like river glass. You ask the price. Are quoted two prices, market and neighbor, and are offered the lower because your hands still have stone dust on them, which the beadmaker reads as proof of someone who will pay with exactness and a nod. You buy oil first, because oil is the market's idea of mercy. The jar you choose is narrow as a decision and stops your nose 2 fingers above its mouth to remind you that good things do not need to shout to be believed. The seller wipes the lip with a scrap of linen so the first drop will be yours and not the mat's. You thank them with the small word that travels well and put the jar in your basket so it can speak later to hinges and lamps and leather as if it had title to their obedience. At the table where a healer keeps wares, leaves sit in little piles like birds having meetings. There is something for bites. You already have a net, but bites are enterprising. Something for coughs. Something for nerves on the days when the river is shy. And patience must grow longer legs. A mortar the size of a child's head lives at the edge, and you watch the pestle speak to it in the convincing voice of a priest. The healer smiles and asks about your neighbor's plaster. Word travels as steadily as carts. You swap a sprig of advice for a pinch of something that smells like mint taught to be brave by bitter friends. 2 stalls later, you are in a kingdom of sandals. Leather straps preen on a crossbar. Souls lean against one another, telling stories about roads they have known and are willing to meet again. Your own sandals have opinions about their straps, loose, And the strap seller has opinions about your sandals. Good feet, honest wear. A strap is cut with a sound like relief. He shoelaces you back into yourself without making you feel managed. You pay with a small coin and a promise to oil the leather the way leather likes, often, but not anxiously. There is a scribe in the market shade, because of course there is. He keeps his board propped on a crate. A boy fans him with a woven thing that once was a problem for a palm and is now a solution for a man. The scribe holds his reed like a knife holds a reflection. He writes names for rations, writes tallies for deliveries, writes notes about debts that will be collected in grain or labor, or a favor shaped like a clay pot. You need him to witness a trade for seed and to record that your neighbor owes you half a jar of oil when honey stops being a rumor and starts being a jar. You hand him an ostrakhan shard with your notes, and he translates your handwriting into his, which is the same as translating your morning into the afternoon's certainty. He chews the reed's tip until it is obedient, and then reminds you of the small charge that keeps him in beer and makes lists feel like they belong to the community and not to some guest from elsewhere. You pay modestly, and he hands you a line that means, in his language and yours, things will happen as we said. It weighs less than anything, and more than most. Heat tests the edge of the awning. The awning holds. Market shade breathes softly, and so do you. You stand at a spice stall that looks like a map. Piles of red and yellow and things that are brown, but differently brown. The seller is a small woman with a smile that seems to have learned from cumin how to be everywhere at once without bothering anyone. She gives you a pinch of something to smell, and your head fills with kitchens you have not yet seen but will. You buy a thimble of it to mix with lentils when the evening wants a song instead of a sermon. What you do not buy is as important as what you do. Honey seems real today, but you have oil and obligations. Dates are soft enough to require pep talks. You tuck 3 in your basket anyway, because being practical does not mean pretending sweetness is unnecessary. A painted box for coal winks at you. Your coin says perhaps later, and the box accepts your apology with the dignity of an object that will still be beautiful tomorrow. You buy thread, because thread is the market's way of saying there is time. A group of youths drift past talking about a race that will happen at dusk, and a girl who can throw a pot sharper than any of them can throw a spear. You would like to see both, pot and spear, but your day has chosen a quieter fame. A shelf that will not tilt, a hinge that will refuse squeak, a jar that will not betray its own contents. Fame is relative. Kitchens are audiences too. At the far end of shade, a man sells remedies for the small beasts that claim hospitality uninvited. Ants, bedbugs, and their distant cousins you prefer not to name at lunch. He speaks softly so as not to excite anyone's imagination. He has powders and ashes and a belief in tidy floors. You buy a small packet because believing in tidy floors has not harmed anyone yet, and because sometimes the world respects you for being the sort of person who prepares before the bite, not after. The packet goes in the basket beside your oil like a plan sitting beside a reason. Near the well, a woman with bracelets up to her elbow sells amulets. They are little more than shaped clay and a line of incised hope. But hope is a currency with excellent exchange rates if held properly. You choose a small one shaped like a knot. She blesses it as if it were hers to bless, and you let her, because sometimes blessing is the point, and not whether it is someone's official job. You run the cord through it and hang it at your neck. It rests there like a reminder that knots are not only things to untie, but also things to keep together. The boy at the scribe's elbow returns with a list of people who owe the market a small kindness for having used the shade more than they use their purses. There is a custom of sweeping the central lane at day's end. You sign on, because there is certain sleep to be found in the dust raised by a broom wielded for the sake of everyone's feet. The scribe writes your name where such names go, and your hand does not argue with your heart about it. Someone calls a joke from the drink seller's corner about beer being soup that forgot to sit still. Everyone pretends it is the first time the joke has been aired. It earns its welcome anyway. You buy a cup, and it is cool and grain soft, and its shadow on the mat is a small graphic argument for sitting down. You sit. The cup sweats. The mat accepts a darker bloom without complaint. Two flies try to read your thoughts, and you wave them away with the mild dignity of a person who refuses to let their mind be eaten in small bites. You walk the edge of the market before leaving, the way one reads a line twice to be sure one has understood. A wood seller with bundles on his shoulder quotes you a price that assumes wood has become devout. You laugh, and he laughs, and a compromise arrives like a third party with excellent timing. You take a small bundle for the hearth, and your shoulder agrees to carry it home the way an old story agrees to stay true. A child with a scratch holds their arm up to you as if you could fix air. You blow on it and apply a smear of the healer's paste, and the child believes you have fixed air. Belief is an excellent physician. When you step back into the noon that is not shade, the sun performs its noon. It is indifferent, and that is its virtue. It is fair, and that is its law. You take the street that remembers palms, and becomes a lane that remembers roofs, and everything remembers your feet. At your door, the bar has dozed in its notch and wakes easily. Inside, the house is the same patient machine it was at dawn, only cooler in its mind, because you have returned with what it likes. Oil, thread, seed, ideas. Bread that you left under linen is ready for its second service. You uncover it, and the smell is a chapter the house has always wanted to read out loud. Warm grain, tiny crackle, a sweetness that is more memory than sugar. You tear a piece, and it tears politely, not like some breads that behave as if their cohesion were an insult. Onion awaits its friend oil. They meet in the pan with a conversation that will later be described as soup, even though both of them know it is simply companionship rendered edible. You add your market spice, and steam rises that carries the news to the roof in case anyone there wanted to feel included. You take the oil jar in your hand the way you take a sentence that will persuade rather than argue. Hinge first. The oil makes a line so fine it would need a scribe to see it. But the hinge sees it and responds in fluent silence. The latch gets the second attention. Its mind is less subtle and appreciates clear speech. The strap gets its turn. You lay oil along it with your thumb, and the leather lifts its chin like a goat being complimented. Tools nearest the door receive a brush of oil on their sockets, not because they squeak, but because you prefer to be the sort of person who teaches gratitude early rather than gratitude late. The new seeds you chose at the market get a jar and a place and a promise. You label the jar with a mark that would entertain a scholar, but is meant only for your own hand. The jar joins others in the cool shelf that the wall and your ingenuity invented together. You admire them all, jars for grain and jars for oil and jars for what if. Jars are a civilization of patience, and you intend to sit on their council as long as breath allows. Heat presses 2 fingers against the window and is reminded that the wall knows its work. You move across the floor with a reed broom and sweep dust that has tried to become citizen into a small pile that can be escorted out with dignity. The broom makes a hush that hangs in the air, like the sound of rain waiting on a roof for someone to remember they love rain. You sweep your own head while you sweep the floor, bristles against bristles. Unnecessary thoughts collect with the dust. Out with both. You take a moment to mend. The patch in your sleeve, an old friend, asks for more thread. The needle passes along like a polite messenger, never her own subject, and yet involved in everything. You make small stitches as if you were telling the shirt a story about its future. There will be work, there will be washing, there will be oil for your hinge and sunlight for your clothespins. Do not worry. Your usefulness is not a question. The neighbor arrives as promised with the crack in her plaster that had looked like a map of a place that does not need to exist. You mix straw and clay and the smallest amount of water and talk to the wall while your hands do the convincing. Stay together, you say to it, as if to a friend with strong opinions. The wall decides you are worth obeying. The neighbor tries to pay you with an apricot. You accept because refusing would insult the apricot. You share it at the threshold and laugh at nothing in particular. The apricot is the argument and the conclusion. You step out for one more errand, to the granary office, where the week's ration is sometimes a jar and sometimes a word, and often a word that ensures the jar later. The clerk behind the plank is younger than his responsibilities and older than his sandals. He reads the scribe's note you brought and nods the nod that moves grain. Your name is added to a small slate that will be wiped at dusk. The record in the scribe's board will remember forever, which is to say, longer than sandals last, and exactly as long as people care to read. You will collect tomorrow. You say thank you to both clerk and chalk. Chalk seems to enjoy gratitude. On the way back, you stop to watch a boy teach a younger boy how not to drop a pot. The older boy uses the method of placing the fear on the ground and then stepping around it. The younger boy approves of this philosophy and does not drop the pot. You approve of both. Back home, the house asks for more order. You oblige because order has never been unkind to you. Rope gets coiled in a way that will undo itself later without tying a knot with your temper. The broom returns to its corner with the handle leaning exactly so that morning will find it cooperative. The stool you keep for mending goes under the window in a patch of light that looks as if the sun were practicing its signature. You remember the amulet you bought, the knot with its small promise. You hold it against the inside of the doorpost, the way some hold their forehead there before leaving for work. You whisper something that would embarrass your mouth if anyone else were present. No one else is present. The amulet keeps counsel, which is its purpose and its pride. The afternoon wants quiet in the middle. You give it a shallow bowl and water, and you stand your feet in it while the world arranges a breeze where a breeze will do the most good. The bowl cools your bones as if bones were a kind of clay that needed soaking to be agreeable. You watch the water relax around your ankles, the way people relax around friends who have no expectations. You think about nothing in particular, which is a skill you have earned and a luxury you can afford. The reed pen sits a while untouched. Then you pick it up and write 3 words on a shard. The name of a person you miss, the name of a tool you love, and the word for enough. You turn the shard over and draw a plumb line very straight and a river very wavy and put them beside each other and decide the drawing makes more sense than several lectures you have heard. You tuck the shard into the jar where good thoughts are kept until they can be shared with someone who needs them. You will know who when they stand in your doorway and search the air for a remedy that is not in the healer's mortar. The market spice has cooled its argument in the soup pot and has decided to be persuasive instead of loud. You taste, and it tastes like a story a grandmother tells with one eyebrow and no raised voice. Bread agrees to be a boat. Onion agrees to tell only the truth. You add a splash of beer for courage, and the soup accepts courage as an ingredient with the seriousness courage deserves. Heat loosens its grip, the way a storyteller's voice lowers at the last turn of a tale. Shadows walk their calm way up the walls. You think of the people still in the market, potter covering his wheels, beadmaker counting the beads that did not get counted earlier because stories interrupted math, scribe waving his fan at the last fly, and losing by choice. You will go back to sweep with them because you signed your name not to a chore, but to a kind of music, and brooms can play. You carry your broom down to the market lane where others have already begun the margin to middle ritual. The broom scratch chorus is more satisfying than some festival drums. It writes a smooth path for tomorrow's feet. Children chase the small cloud of dust and call it a lion, and then graciously allow it to rest. Someone collects bits of debris for the fire. Nothing burns quite as politely as the crumbs of a day. The scribe makes a tiny ceremony of tying his reeds into a bundle. He bows to the lane. The lane accepts like a king who knows he is only king of this much ground and is content. After sweeping, there is the customary small talk that stretches into long friendship if cultivated over enough seasons. You talk of jars that failed, jars that succeeded beyond their rim, of sandals that left and sandals that returned wiser, of oil that never spilled, and oil that did and forgave everybody about it. Someone plays 3 notes on a reed whistle, and the notes apologize for being 3 and not 4. No one minds. Market shade has become market gold, the light heavier and slower and more willing to stay for one more story. You carry home the cleaned lane in your lungs. Your house receives you with the open face of a friend who has tidied just before you arrived. The soup is exactly itself. Bread does what bread is good at. Dates discover that they still have a job in the world. You eat with a spoon that fits your hand better than most hands fit their jobs. You drink water that says nothing clever. You are the sort of person who sits while eating even if standing would be faster, because standing would be disrespectful to what was done to make this bowl possible. Hinges do not argue. The door remembers your hand. The oil jar gives itself a nod in your direction, as if to say, "See, we are both useful." You collect the amulet's small weight between finger and thumb. and move it a thumb width so it can see better. You are aware of being watched by nothing in particular and everything at once, which is what a home is when it is finally happy enough to forget it is a structure and remember it is a promise. You take the sandals in your lap and rub them with another sigh of oil. They smell like leather and journey. You need the straps the way you need dough, which is essentially an apology to both. They forgive you with improved flexibility. Tomorrow, their opinion of your feet will be kinder. Tomorrow, your opinion of the road will be kinder, because your feet will have expressed their opinions early and in a reasonable tone. When the dishes are set aside, and the broom has had enough praise, and the oil jar has stopped being the most interesting thing in the room, you climb to the roof for the last errands of the day. Errands that look like resting and feel like arriving. The sky is at its most convincing shade of blue. A star practices being a star in a corner before the rest show up. The river writes its long line and dots it with boat lights that mind their business. Someone 3 roofs over has decided to practice a tune at a volume polite enough to share and confident enough to keep. You approve. Sometime in the gentle afterwards, the neighbor who reserved your attention earlier brings her daughter. The one whose eyes belong to river and sky both. You show her the faience string in your basket. The daughter tries it on with an expression that tells you she will already know how to wear joy when bigger joys arrive. The mother tries to pay with too much gratitude. You reduce it with a joke about beads multiplying when left alone in the dark. The joke is not true. The gratitude is. It settles into the evening like another lamp being lit in a window that had always planned to have one. A breeze noses the page of the day you have left open. You tuck the corner down. You tell the lamp you will be up soon. You tell your body that walking and lifting and trading and mending and sweeping were all forms of the same prayer, which is called keeping. Your body says amen in the language of contented joints. You gather the basket's last treasures, the amulet's knot, the packet of powder for when tiny beasts forget their place, the pinch of spice, and you put them where they will be useful before they are necessary. The future purrs. The market is quiet now, folded back into rooms and corners. The stalls mere shadows of themselves, waiting for tomorrow to remember them. You remember them now, with the exactness that gives sleep its easiest door. Bead, jar, rope, oil, strap, thread, seed, broom, pen, knot, date. You say each word like a stepping stone across a very slow river. When you finally step onto the roof, the lamp is already there because you brought it with your hands, but it feels as if it had walked ahead to prepare the place. The flame makes a circle of agreement. You sit within it. The river answers the circle with a line that says yes. You stretch your legs. You count in your head the number of times you were given kindness today and stop because the counting turned into more kindness. You breathe in and 6 out. The lamp does what lamps do when they love someone. It behaves. There will be other markets, other lists, other days when honey is a rumor and oil is a sermon and sandals are advice. There will be days when scarcity stands closer and you stand closer back. There will be days when abundance forgets to show off and you remember anyway. Whatever the day brings, the Midlands of noon will always have this lane of shade, this tune of brooms, this steady scribe, these jars that believe in being full, and empty with equal dignity. You lie down under the piece of sky that has been assigned to your roof and close your eyes because you want to, not because you must. In the dark behind your lids, the market stalls arrange themselves like polite stars, pottery in one constellation, rope in another, oil in its small glowing cluster, beads like a galaxy where people remember to speak gently. You drift through them with your basket that is now only a dream of a basket, and your feet make no sound, and no one rushes you, and everything you need is within reach, and its price is kindness. You are awake in the kindly middle. First, sleep has left its cup on the table and gone out into the alley for air. Second, sleep is on its way, but will not knock. The roof invites your bare feet like a map of cool. The clay lamp is a small moon that knows you by name. You sit with your back to the low wall and let the bricks give you their stored warmth in polite installments. Far below, the Nile breathes an old, even breath. Somewhere, in the palm rows, a jackal states a distant opinion and then withdraws it, as if he remembered he did not file the proper form for midnight speeches. You make your little patrol, the one that turns a night into a nest. The ember in the hearth sighs when you coax it. Ash folds itself like a blanket with good manners. The latch remembers how to lift and how to settle. The mosquito net hangs from its peg with the air of a curtain between the world and your forehead. A clay jar on the floor ticks as it releases the day's coolness, the way a careful storyteller releases detail, slowly, with pleasure. Your hand brushes the rim. It is not cold. Exactly, only steady. Steady is better than cold at this hour. There is a whisper of wind from the south. Nothing grand, the smallest rumor. It pries at the edge of your linen and then behaves. Stars keep their appointments as if supervised by a scribe with a very neat board. A neighbor coughs twice. Another neighbor mutters something about goats and destiny and falls quiet. This is the country between sleeps, the land of the small, useful thing. You belong here as surely as the lamp does, as surely as the river does. Tonight, your thoughts are honest with you. The river has been shy this season. Channels sulk, fields listen harder than usual. Jars are counted twice, then once again, because twice felt lonely. You would not say the word famine aloud on a roof at midnight, not because you are superstitious, but because you are thoughtful. Instead, you call it a thin year. Thin years require fat patience and proper friends. Fortunately, you have both. You lean your elbows on the low wall and look toward the bank you cannot see. In your mind, you run a thumb along the measure stick down at the shore, the notches you cut with your careful chisel last flood, when the river rose with the punctuality of a priest. Each notch, a story about enough. This year, the water sits a few stories down. It is still a story. You prefer stories with many chapters, but you will read the short ones kindly. Your house is a good collaborator. Thick walls keep the memory of night. The roof is a ceiling the sky borrows. The pot stand cools water as if it were singing to it. The grain jars sit in their tidy choir, tall, round-shouldered, sealed with clay, and a stamp pressed by your thumb, the thumb that also holds chisels and bread, and the corner of a blanket when you are telling it what to do. You do not open the jars often now. You listen to them instead, tapping and hearing the sound that tells you how much patience is inside. Second sleep does not come when summoned by a raised eyebrow. It comes when you build a small town for it to live in. So you do the housekeeping of wakefulness. You check the wick and pinch it true. You smooth the mat with the edge of your foot. You fold the cloak you used at dusk into the shape that will lift your shoulder when your head remembers it has weight. You breathe in 4, out 6. Counting is not a trap. It is a key you turn slowly. Down the lane, a door opens. You see the shape of a woman carrying a little jar in the crook of her elbow. She walks with the quiet steps of someone who knows every disloyal patch of the alley and refuses to step there. She will be nursing a child who does not care about calendars. You send her a private blessing that uses no gods, only kindness. The door closes. The night accepts. If a thought about grain sits heavy on your tongue, you let it sit. Grain is allowed to be heavy. It has carried everyone for as long as anyone has been carrying anything. You think of the scribe's board with its careful columns, rations promised, rations delivered, festival days, repair days, days when the temple granary opens its mouth like a sensible crocodile and dispenses measured mercy. You think of the foreman who knows how to ask men to do good work without inventing a villain to fight. You think of your own hands, which have been trusted by tools and walls and water. These thoughts are not worries. They are inventory. You stand and walk the roof's short length. The ladder leans where you left it, agreeable as always. A reed broom rests beside the hatch, ready to escort dawn back down the stairs when it arrives. A tiny broken pot rim you meant to throw away glows like a crescent beside the lamp. The rim can stay. It is a small moon attending the lamp's small sun, and every sun appreciates a moon. A mosquito begins a speech above your ear. You present the net, which interrupts with excellent timing. The mosquito retreats to pursue a career in music. You wish it well. Because you are awake, the room below makes requests that it would not dare make of a person asleep. You climb down, lamp in hand, and do the work that will repay you later with an easier morning. You loosen the seal on the beer jar and listen for the soft release. The smell is friendly and a little sour. It makes your tongue aware of itself and then makes your mind forget your tongue. You lift the lid of the seed jar and take a pinch of what will be tomorrow's courage and bread. You set aside the cloth you will need for the hinge's daily forgiveness. These are actions that take seconds and repay in hours. On the stool, you keep for mending. Sandals wait with the solemn faces of creatures that have carried you to the river and will carry you again. You take one in your lap and rub oil into the strap until it remembers kindness. Leather is like some people. It behaves better when you recall its better self to it. The soul shows a place where the road tried to teach you about rocks. You teach the road about patches. The needle moves. The strap breathes. The sandal decides to be a sandal again. You pause, long enough to listen to the sleeping house breathe. Stone, mat, clay, oil, wood. Everything makes a small sound that would be shy if heard at noon and is perfectly frank at midnight. In the corner, The basket of onions settles, each globe a quiet moon with a strong opinion about soup. The broom's bristles relax, fanning into a little skirt. The pot stand sweats a cool charm into the floor. Even the bar in the door has a voice, the heavy syllable of wood remembering tree. Your own belly remarks upon its emptiness in the manner of a minor official complaining about festival crowds. You answer with a date dipped in the thought of oil and a mouthful of beer. The date is sweet in the way of an honest friend, not sweet in the way of a braggart. Your stomach apologizes for its tone. You accept. You are a benevolent ruler over a very small kingdom. Because the river is shy, and jars are letters that must be opened carefully, you adjust recipes. It is a pleasure disguised as prudence. Tomorrow's bread will ask for more water and less insistence. You will give it patience and a longer rise. Beer will be thinned for kindness to the grain stores and thickened with wisdom in the form of mash left to remember. Onion soup will welcome greens that volunteer at the edges of fields. Lentils will make a respectable case for themselves. You think of your neighbor with the wide laugh, how she steams leaves in an upturned basket and pretends the steam is the applause of invisible guests. You will ask her for the trick again, and she will show you again. And both of you will pretend you had forgotten, and both of you will enjoy pretending. The temple granary holds the civic heart of a thin year. The memory is solid in you. The long storehouse with its cool ribs of wall and its smell of dust that has decided to be useful. Sacks in rows, jars sealed with clay and sealed again with attention, scribes with boards, reeds, and the sort of faces that look severe when subtracting and kind when adding. The priest who oversees ration days has a voice like a low drum and hands like a gardener. He speaks the theology of portioning. There is enough for today when we share the weight of tomorrow. His words do not make the jars fuller. They make people stand straighter while taking what is given. That is its own fullness. You remember the way your name sounded in that room, the way the scribe wrote it without music, and yet somehow it sang. You remember the stamp pressed into the clay, temple, branch, date, and the way it felt to carry home a measured mercy with the knowledge that you would make it feed not only stomachs, but moods. Mercy makes moods easier to carry. Back on the roof, the air has learned a new trick. It smells faintly of wet earth from far off, as if someone were washing the world in a basin and had spilled a little. You turn your face to the smell and close your eyes because eyes sometimes interfere with noses. The smell is not strong. It is enough. You take the measure stick from beside the hatch, your own poor man's nalometer, not sacred, only useful, and run your thumb over its notches. Each notch is a conversation you had with the river when it was more talkative. Each is a promise you made to yourself about how you would behave when it was less. You touch the lowest notch with your thumb and ask the night to go, and whisper to the water that it may visit that mark again, soon, politely, with confidence. The night agrees to try. A thought wanders in from the lane. Your neighbor, whose roof leaks when the wind pretends to be helpful. You promise to look. The wind is middle-aged tonight and does not know whether to be helpful. This is a good time to write a note. You light the small lamp on the threshold and take an ostrakhan from the basket of broken pots that have chosen a second life. Your reed pen scratches a reminder. the name, the action, a small drawing of a tile for your own amusement. You set the shard where your morning hand will find it, because morning hands sometimes pretend they never met night minds. Your body remembers a stitch in your side from yesterday's work and asks about it politely. You heat a small jar in the embers until it is warm. Wrap it in cloth and place it against the complaint. The complaint becomes a discussion and then a nap. You smile into the darkness and think of your friend the foreman, who believes every problem is a stone that can be moved by the right leverage. You have learned that many problems are also knots that can be untied by the right breath. Speaking of knots, your amulet, shaped like one, lies against your chest, heavy as a small comfort. You pinch it once between thumb and finger, as if to remind it that it must keep its promises because you are keeping yours. Work steady, share fairly, speak gently, rest when rest is the best work available. Across the roofline, a cat appears with the precise confidence of a god auditioning for a minor role. The cat walks the wall, glances at you as if to check your papers, and sits with its tail arranged like punctuation. You pass inspection. The cat permits you to continue being yourself. You think of the village as an organism with helpful habits. In thin years, the habits lift more. You picture the sweeping circle at market's close, the way brooms learn to sing together. You picture the passing of a water jar hand to hand when a worker coughs. No one saying me or mine, everyone saying drink. You picture a neighbor leaving a heel of bread on a window ledge, the way a river leaves silt on a bank. A quiet generosity that makes future work easier. You think of the scribe's face when he pretends not to approve of all this kindness because he is, officially, a man of numbers. He approves. He writes it down in a column called Things That Make Numbers Behave. Somewhere, a flake of cloud smudges the sky. A wind from the south lifts your hair and puts it down again in almost the same place, as if it were practicing for a stronger conviction later. You feel a desire to go to the bank and listen. It is not practical exactly, but it is not impractical either. You take the lamp and the ladder and the sandals, and you descend, the way a thought descends from the mind into the hand. The lane at night is a different city. Its stones have put on their soft shoes. Shadows behave themselves. A dog with an honest face escorts you for a little while, and then finds a more urgent philosophical appointment elsewhere. Your sandals make the friendly whisper of things that remember the road. At the last corner, a frog demonstrates how to hop like a proverb. You approve of both frog and proverb and proceed. At the bank, the water is darker than the sky, which is a trick it performs when it wants to be taken seriously. You set the lamp on a flat stone and kneel to let your hand enter the cool. The river answers promptly, here. It flows like a long animal under your palm. You do not ask it questions it cannot answer. You listen for the sort of sound that means it is rising, or the sort that means it is waiting. Tonight, you hear waiting with a faint cough of rising. The cough could be your imagination. Imagination counts as a citizen in thin years. You nod to it as you would to a helpful neighbor. You press the measure stick into the muck beside the rock, where you always press it. You pull it up, and the dark line is perhaps a thumb width higher than the last week, and perhaps that is the lamp lying to you. And perhaps it is truth. You decide it is permission to be a little lighter on your feet tomorrow. Not lighter in your work, never that, but lighter in your head. Heads like that kind of lightness. On the way home, you see a figure moving slowly with a bundle. It is the grandmother who taught 2 children how to shaduf properly. She has a basket of greens from the damp strip by the canal. She shares those greens with a family who adopted a 3rd child and a 4th chicken and seems happy about both. You offer to walk with her, and she accepts as if the idea had been hers, which it was, which it always is with certain grandmothers. She tells you a short joke about a scribe and a goose. You laugh politely. The goose in the joke is the clever one, as usual. Back at your door, you part ways. She wishes a blessing on your lamp. You wish one on her knees. Lamps and knees are the infrastructure of a decent village. May both be spared unnecessary drama. Inside, the room knows the silhouette of your lamp and shows you your own furniture, the way a host shows a guest the best seat. You set the lamp down, and the flame recognizes where it is by how the air moves. You climb to the roof, and the roof receives you with the restraint of an old friend. Linen, mat, low wall, the faint mark of your shoulder where you leaned earlier. Your small kingdom of comfort is intact. You breathe again in the measured way that convinces the belly to write its complaint more legibly and then file it. In for 4, out for 6. Your breath smooths out until it feels like the river. If the river were in the habit of being under your ribs. You tuck the cloak so it gives the exact lift to the exact place. You let the night pour slowly over you, the way a jar pours slowly because the lip was burnished by a careful hand. Second sleep approaches in its proper clothes, softer edges, cooler hands, no appetite for conversation. When it comes not to conquer by stealth, but to offer a treaty you have already signed. You think one last practical thought. Tomorrow you will move the jars so air can pass under the furthest one. You will test the hinge again, because hinges have the dignity of forgetting. You will carry the patching clay to the neighbor who pretends she can carry it better than you, and sometimes can. These are not worries. They are a folded list set beside the lamp. To make sleep's path smoother still, you perform the old domestic ritual. Name 3 things the day did correctly. The first is that the shaduf remembered your rhythm and did not embarrass you in front of the scribe. The second is that your sandal accepted its repair without sulking. The third is that the market shade held when the sun tested it. You could keep going. Your neighbor's laugh, the date's sincerity, the cat's good paperwork. But 3 is polite. In some houses, this is the hour of small prayers. You whisper one with no nouns, all verbs. Keep, share, soften, return. It is enough grammar for a night. You turn once. The mat adjusts its opinion to match yours. The lamp breathes. Far below, the river lifts its shoulder, one quiet finger higher, perhaps. You decide perhaps is sufficient and let it be the last word in your mind. Perhaps is not doubt here. It is a promise keeping its voice down so sleep can hear itself arriving. Someone laughs in a dream on the roof 2 houses over. It sounds like a door that learned to be polite. A breeze turns a page of sky, and you read nothing on it, because the best pages before sleep have no writing. Your last sensation before the middle closes its door is the weight of the amulet at your collarbone, and the way it makes a period where your breath wants a period. The lamp's circle narrows, not because it is tired, but because it is kind. The river's sound subtracts a little of itself, so your heart will not bother to keep time. Second sleep takes your hand. You go willingly. Toward morning, when the dark becomes a color instead of a fact, you surface for one sip of water and a thought about measuring sticks. You do not rise. You trust. The jars wait like quiet moons. The broom holds its little skirt. The sandals lean, primed for work and forgiven for rest. The roof remembers you left your head here. Head should be easy to find when the day begins. Yours will be. And if the river is shy, when you stand at its bank, you will speak kindly. If it is brave, you will not brag on its behalf. If it lingers, you will show it the work you did in its absence. If it rises, you will walk beside it without argument. You and the river have this arrangement. You count to 4 in, to 6 out. It counts to flood, growth, harvest. And between you, a village. Between you, a season. Between you, enough. The lamp exhales once, as if agreeing with your plan. The brick at your shoulder turns from warm to nothing to the exact temperature of your skin. You join the night instead of resisting it, and the night, generous as a temple jar opened on a thin day, pours out what it has. Rest, plain and unembellished. You drink it without ceremony. River returning to promise. And so, our journey for tonight comes to a quiet close. The story lingers, like the last glow of candlelight, as you drift further into rest. If these gentle wanderings bring you peace, I invite you to like and subscribe, so that whenever you wish, you may return, and we can travel together once more. For now, dear listener, may your dreams be kind and your night be restful. Until next time.